welcome to the Arsenal Vision podcast with me, your host Tim Stillman, your Christian Norgard of the day, because Elliot is on a flight back from London, having been at the game on Sunday, and Phil is unavailable today, so I am stepping in, next man up. No injury crisis here. Well, a bit of an injury crisis here, but we'll get through it with me in the hosting chair, looking back at Sunday's satisfying, traumatic, stressful, worrying, jubilant 2-1 victory over Chelsea, maybe all of the above. And I think this is a really interesting game to talk about, actually, and to pass emotionally as well as tactically. And here to do both of those things with me is Paul. Hello, Paul.
Woohoo! Do you say parse or pass? Because I think pass works as well. Pass it emotionally through our systems.
Well, we didn't pass it very well in the last 5-10 minutes of the game. I think we'll come on to that. But I was thinking pass like arse with a P, basically.
Okay.
And also here to pass the game with us and pass the time is Clive. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
So, gentlemen, I watched the Manchester City game on Saturday evening in the company of Elliot, who, as you know, as most of our listeners know, is also, an anxious football watcher, as am I, to be fair. And it's quite interesting, because we've got this dynamic quite a lot at the moment where Manchester City are playing before us. We're playing at the same time on Wednesday, but I think after that, the next two games, they go before us. And so we're going to have to, quote unquote, put up with this quite a lot, I think. And Paul, if I start with you, obviously we won't go into the details of the Man City game against Leeds, but, City eked it out, got it done. I think maybe some similarities to what we did on Sunday. One of the things I was talking about with Elliot is at the moment, this is one of the things about being in the title race, right? That you don't just want Arsenal to win, you want Man City to lose. And when they don't do it, I mean, some people might say it kind of almost feels like a defeat. I don't know whether you watched the game, but how did you feel with City winning and what that added coming into this game?
Yeah, so I think I was a bit of a stereotype about the City game and maybe even about the Arsenal game and my reaction to it afterwards. I'd say I'd flipped on my feeling on the Arsenal game, except I think I've gone to a third place, like Starbucks is the third place. I'm not the opposite, but I feel totally different having watched the game again. Not that everything's great and wonderful, and like with City, I didn't watch the game. That's not something I would do to myself. I think we can all agree they're going to win most games.
Yep.
Maybe not all of the games. So why would I do that to myself? I know also in each one of those games, there's going to be a point where I think there's something in it for the other team, or maybe they might win. I'm not going to do that to myself. So I definitely fell into the trap of there's the City inevitability. The less new information you have, the more you stick with your old. And my old information is City will go on a run and they'll win, and Rodri's back, and now they're clicking. That's my picture of City. And so emotionally, I go into the Arsenal game. I'm still relatively positive, but this is a big game against Chelsea, and they're a flawed team, but they got 8-9 top players there, and they can hurt you when they're aligned, when they're motivated, when they're at it, and you knew they would be on that day in this game. They can hurt you. So I was pretty keyed up for this one, and we'll talk about the Arsenal game. But I definitely came out of that one. We did the instant reaction after that, and I was pretty critical of the team and how the second half went. So I think I really felt I was aligned with your classic supporter, I think, in both of those regards. I was all primed to be Mr. Classic supporter, wound up, and I was.
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that, Paul, because I felt like that in the stadium on Sunday. I don't know if you felt the same, Clive. This was really... I like to flatter myself that I'm above the whole, everyone's antsy and on edge.
Me too.
I
think I'm above everybody.
Yeah, yeah, it's great that, isn't it? Maybe that's why we're gentlemen with a big enough ego to talk about football for 90 minutes twice a week. But like, not that I'm above the anxiety, but I'm above expressing it and shouting at the players and stuff like that. And Clive, this is the first game where I definitely wasn't above that. This is the first game where I got a bit agitated and shouted some things that perhaps at our players at times that perhaps, on reflection was slightly harsh. And I mean, we'll come on to how I think this dissipated a little bit, but
Yeah.
I was confident coming into the game, Clive. Even with the City result, I thought we haven't got a problem with Chelsea at the moment. This is like we deal with them, and we did deal with them in the end, but I thought we'd be a bit more convincing than this. But what was your feeling kind of coming into this game? And I guess, what did you feel in the stadium when this game started?
Yeah, I was really sort of disappointed with myself, right? Because part of my pre-match process is to get myself into that place where I'm worried, which normally happens naturally. The Spurs game was a traumatic day, the whole day leading up to it. I can see, Tim, why you go to games. Sometimes it's better to just be there, not be there. Obviously, you couldn't go to Spurs, so obviously it was like it's tougher sometimes when you're not there. And leading to Chelsea, because a few people were about, we had a few drinks beforehand, and I sort of never had time to get worried. When I got into the ground, it's like, okay, I'm not stressed. It's almost like I hadn't done my pre-match stretches. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't prepared for the game, as if we could influence it. I just went along as a true punter, and thinking this should be fun. The game starts, and they turn us around, which annoys me to death, right? So, because now I'm looking at a different game to what I'm normally looking at. The first half is normally at the other end. I can't really see our attacks. I can see our defence, and vice versa, right? So they turn us around. I have to be honest with you, and I know I'm not normal in this regard. I wasn't very stressed about it. And I keep asking myself why, because everybody I spoke to was literally on the edge of a nervous breakdown. I'm thinking, what's up here? And I said, why did I feel this way? And I think part of the turning around thing was a part of it, because I saw their goalkeeper very close to my end in the first half. And so I immediately got encouraged about how they were bringing the ball out. I'm thinking, well, we're winning this. What are you worried about? We're going to get a goal soon. They're crap. You know what I mean? And that's literally what I saw in the first half. I don't normally see our attack at such close detail in the first half. And I could see we were winning races. It wasn't things weren't happening, but they were being pushed around and we were winning races. So I was immediately encouraged, and then we scored. Didn't really care how we scored. We scored. I knew we were going to score. Literally we were in charge for me, it felt like. We scored, go in half-time 1-0. See a few people, have a chat, and go from there. But it didn't quite transpire that way. And I just feel, watching Chelsea, and we spoke about you last week, Tim, actually, on the podcast, going to all those games at Stamford Bridge over many, many years, knowing you were going to get beat. Knowing Sendros wasn't quite good enough, mate, to hold us up. You know what I mean? And you were there in all those games. And I have a feeling now that this is completely reversed. It's almost like it doesn't matter what they do, we're going to beat them. And this is the fourth time we've played them this year. I don't know why people are going to expect something convincing. When you play each other 4 times, you get a little bit of knowledge and data about each other. And if anything, it was going to be like this. So, yeah, I know, but speaking to people afterwards, people looking at me like, you've lost your mind, Clive. What's wrong with you? Do you know what I mean? And I know I'm not, but I felt fairly relaxed almost the entire time. And I can't really explain it.
That's interesting, and we'll come on to, because I felt that there was a fraughtness in the stadium, which I understood, and I kind of felt it myself at the beginning. You could sense like the importance of it. But Paul, one of the things, and Clive referenced it there, it's next on my running list. I've just got Sanchez encouragement, and it was quite interesting. I can't remember who I heard say it. I think it was on the Totally Football show, actually. Matt Davis-Adams, who actually works for Chelsea, he's a Forest fan. But he commentated on the game for Chelsea TV, and he was saying he felt that the Arsenal fans were anxious, but then they were able to channel that into Robert Sanchez, like all that nervous energy, all that, come on, kind of turned into, giving him the whoa, and actually, like, it gave us something to focus our attention on a little bit. And big picture, Paul, I think this game is about two goalkeepers. I think it's about one goalkeeper that is
that's
incredibly
great
good and won a game, and one who is absolutely dreadful and lost the game for the other team. But how did you see those kind of, I guess, those early moments, and particularly when Sanchez makes that horrendous error, which we really could have capitalised on?
Yeah. What's impressive about Sanchez is he doesn't seem to realize he's crap. Like, who should have been really nervous when the ball was coming to him? Well, him. But he's not really any different.
He seemed oblivious. It was so weird. Yeah.
Fair play to him. I wish I could bring that kind of confidence to how bad I am at all the stuff I do in my life, but it kind of gets to me. To him, it has not, doesn't seem to have impacted his career yet. Chelsea would be a lot better when they get the keeper that allows them to play the way they want to. So what I thought was, so how I felt at the time was, yes, there's something in this for us. If Chelsea keep trying to play the same way, and they did. So that was nice, especially in the first half, but probably the whole game. I think they played into, we're going to play out from the back. I think we expected it, and that's why we set up the way we did. There has been narratives about, midfield battles. It wasn't really a midfield battle. We set up to press their back line. They set up to press out of their back line, up the right through Reece James and Neto. And I think that explains a few things we did that I think everybody saw, which was Trossard moving centrally. I think it was to get close to Eze and Gyökeres so we could knock it around and do something from central and get going, because Rice was in press mode and Zubimendi was in press mode. And I think some of the narrative was that, we played Rice deep and Zubimendi up. And I think that was more about the best positions for them to press from rather than how we wanted to try and control mid. We were playing for turnovers early on and throughout the game, and they were looking to channel it up the right through Reece James and Neto. And it also explains why Trossard also kept drifting in from the left, not just to get close to Eze, but to stay with Reece James, to stay in those pockets that could. And so it was almost like, forget your normal tactics. They're going to play it out from the back. We're going to put Declan Rice where he can press their back line their midfielders into the back line the best, and Zubimendi the best, and Trossard comes in with Reece James. And it's almost a very simple game plan that led into, we get to press Sanchez quite a bit, and they get to attack down our left-hand side, and we see who comes out of it the better. You said it was a game of two goalkeepers. I think it was also a game of two kinds of deliveries. You take away Reece James and his delivery, either from corners or from the Trent Alexander-Arnold side of the game, they had nothing. And of course, we got our results from our deliveries. So, it was a very stripped down game plan from us that was very interesting to look back at afterwards. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand why Declan Rice is central and Zubimendi. It was the best place to press their back line and to get at them.
Yeah, definitely. And Clive, one of the things going into this game, I wondered if Chelsea might repeat what they tried to do in the Carabao Cup semi-final. And in fact, which I don't think was the worst tactic for them, but I felt that might have even definitely would have made even more sense in a game where it's actually 0-0 and where, if it's like 0-0 with 5 minutes to go, they don't have to overcommit like they had to in the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg. But something they would do, it was quite interesting that both teams did something similar with their left wingers. And, Paul's talked about their Trossard kind of coming in field, and you kind of know Reece James is going to hit those areas anyway. But Chelsea did something quite similar as well in build-up. And when they were trying to pass out from the back, they were kind of swapping Fernandez and Palmer and getting Palmer in very central positions. And I have to say, I felt a few times that gave us... Chelsea didn't make very much of it when it happened, but it did feel to me like there were a few times where it's like, oh, Cole Palmer's got the ball in the centre circle and he's running at our back line and he's got us turned. Like, how did you see those
Declan
kind of...
Rice is up the field and Zubimendi's up. So he was...
Yeah.
There was all that space in midfield and no battle.
It's bait and switch, right? How did you see that kind of the tactical aspect of it early on, Clive?
Yeah, you can't miss when Cole Palmer's long white socks are disappearing into your team. You can't miss him from the stands.
It looks like Bambi on ice, doesn't he?
Yeah, he doesn't look like he should be running that fast, but suddenly people are not in the screen, you know. But I don't think they hurt us enough. So what have we been doing since the Spurs game? But don't forget, you mentioned the word repeat. This was a repeat team for us. So I really enjoyed the Spurs games, everyone did, right? And so we have our fullbacks sort of cradling the team on the outside a little bit more, not being too high too early like we did around Christmas period. And we have Trossard, Eze, Saka and Gyökeres almost like a box for attack. Some of it quite narrow on occasions, but two providers for two forwards, and with Saka being a forward in this case, you know, alongside Gyökeres. And I really like that. But I think sometimes the matchup is not right. And very quickly, I could see that the Trossard-Reece James matchup was a matchup he preferred rather than Trossard preferred.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, sometimes you just meet somebody and he's just exactly the person you don't want to see on this day. Reece James is a really strong player, really good in tackles. He'd much prefer to be not quite on the touchline, but slightly inside where he can get around people and be an extra midfielder, like how we used Miles last year, you know, a strong player who's played in midfield and wide areas. I'm thinking, this is the wrong matchup. It wasn't that Trossard wasn't playing, he didn't have a great game, but he was not allowed to have a great game because Chelsea's best player was his opponent, and he was really under a lot of pressure. And I'm thinking, wrong man, wrong day. It happens. I didn't like Chelsea were good at getting out, even though I don't know why they kept doing it. I mean, because I was petrified for them back there. You know, it seems like none of their defenders can play on the ball, and the goalkeeper was even worse. Yet they kept trying to, which is credit to the coaching staff. They've got them believing in that. They kept trying to. 5 times we'd get it, not make the most of it. But every now and again, Bambi was dancing through, wasn't he? And I'm thinking, what's happening here? I'm sure you read the article too. It was a great article from Michael Cox in The Athletic today, talking about how Fernandez and Cole Palmer switched and how Arsenal dealt with it. And Arsenal went aggressive man-to-man, you know, pushing onto Palmer from Saliba, going all the way in. And when I start to see that, I'm thinking, yeah, we fixed something here now. We need to get around them, which we did. And so, yeah, fully respecting Chelsea for what they tried to do. But I don't know, watch them. They always seem like 1 or 2 players short. Back in the day, they used to traumatize us. Drogba was on the end of their aggressiveness. Do you know what I mean? And and they're a much better goalkeeper and Peter Cech than what they've got right now, you know, to make sure they can deal with things at the back end of their pitch. And they have a ball-playing centre-backs back in the day. They don't have that now really to the same level and quality and presence. So despite looking at them tactically and thinking, you're quite good here, I didn't feel the fear until they had corners, funny enough. And looking at Arsenal outside of our shape, and I like the box 4, I like the way the fullbacks are playing at the moment. I love our centre-backs, etc. I'm a little bit concerned about the centre of our pitch. You know, the centre of that pitch. And I haven't felt for a while we've dominated the game from there in our 2 centre mids, in our double pivot. I'm not saying they're playing bad. They're part of our tactical plan, but I'm not feeling that domination because I think they're the best in the league. But saying those words now compared to a month or 2 ago don't quite sound as confident as I'm saying them. Do you see? Yeah. I don't think either Rice or Zubimendi are right bang at it at the moment. And I don't think they're quite controlling games, either on the ball or off the ball.
Yeah, I mean, they've both played a lot of football. That's the thing. I saw Zubimendi's played more outfield minutes than anyone else. He's run further. Declan Rice talking about, both of you spoken about that kind of aggressive, high-pressing approach. Declan Rice, the whole second half is stretching his leg out. You know, clearly, I think it's taken a little bit of a toll on him. So probably on Wednesday
look around
night,
the pitch sometimes during the breaks in play. people on their haunches. People were.
Yep.
Did you get
Rice
that
was
feeling?
several times. Yeah,
Several times. There were others doing it as well. The fullbacks were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder, I'm going to bring a little scenario for you. We had a week off, right? For the first time in ages. This would be the 1 week you can dial down training. You can really dial it down. And I think there's a lot of joy on getting this result. Based on the fact I don't think there was much heavy work, and we might see the benefit of no work. Like, it looked a bit edgy in this game, not doing work in the next few games when we get our legs back under us again, knowing we're going to have to play every 3 days until May. But
yeah, definitely. At this time of year, players get more days off from training because the idea is that you're in tune now, and you don't necessarily need to train every day to stay in shape. So I think there's definitely something there. So this was, when I say an interesting tactical battle, that makes it sound like it was a really boring game, and I don't think it was. I think it was maybe slightly low on quality, but I think, Paul, we were on top in that. This followed. I felt this game followed a bit of a pattern that's become quite familiar, where we start okay, we go through the gears, we really get on top, we get the goal. We'll discuss later maybe what happens after we get the goal at the moment, but we go 1-0 up, and I think it's probably too much to say the goal was coming, but I felt like we were on top at that point. And I don't really know what else to say here, Paul, about our set pieces, because it feels like it's all been said, but at the same time, I think it would do a disservice to skate over Saka again, that delivery. If I'm Thomas Tuchel watching that game, I'm thinking, I've got Reece James, Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka. We should be scoring a hatful of England should be scoring hatfuls of bloody set pieces at the World Cup this summer. But that ball to the back post, and as good as I think Reece James is, and I think in this game, Reece James is the only one I really look at in that Chelsea team and think, yeah, he's a ball, like he's a real baller, like he can live with us. But it's so typical. We've seen it so often. Brilliant delivery from Saka to the back post, and actually on this occasion, we perhaps see where Reece James isn't an amazing one-on-one defender, because he kind of loses Gabriel. But Gabriel, the desire to make that first contact again and put it back into an area, it just, the consistency of the delivery, the consistency of Gabriel getting the first contact, like, I don't know what else there is to say, Paul, but I feel like we should say something about just how good we are at set pieces without it kind of becoming what external people are like, you know, crying over, like, oh, has the game lost its soul and all of that. Like, I think it's become so commonplace that we kind of almost don't get credit for it anymore.
Yeah, well, we've anymore ever. You know, we shouldn't look to the external world for credit for really anything these days. Certainly not set pieces. Gabriel, he's a genius. He's an whatever the gene is for being on the receiving end of corners. It's not just he's aggressive. He's an absolute genius. He flies over the top of them. It's quite funny watching Reece James. I mean, they've deliberately picked him as the guy. You know, he's short, he's stocky, he's smart, he's clever. He does give him space. He obviously has a plan to deal with Gabriel. And was it Mike Tyson who said, everybody has a plan to deal with Gabriel, and then he punches you in the face. You know, you can put 2 people on him. You can put 3 people on him. It really doesn't matter. He'll just have 3 people hanging off him as he flies through the air. And he's got a very clear plan to lam it back with his head into where Saliba and co are. And it's a fantastic delivery by Saka. It kind of undresses them. There's nothing they can do about that. I mean, what you put 6 players well past that back post for where Gabriel might fly into. There's really nothing they can do about it. It's perfectly executed. It's fantastic. And he can, is it sustainable? Is us getting a few corners every game sustainable? It is. Therefore, it's sustainable because, you know, this is not small sample size territory. This is population sized sample with Gabriel getting on the end of these. He's just unbelievable. And I think you've got to, you know, he gets a lot of credit, but I don't think it's understood just how amazing he is. I think he's unique. I've seen other players, really good when they get on the end of. He is the end of, right? The ball comes to him. He just has a genius in the box that, and the rest of his game, like I think he continues to grow into his game. Some of the best deliveries beyond their back line in this is probably only 2 or 3 in this game. It's Gabriel. And do you remember that keepy uppy challenge they showed the video of with Zinchenko, and he was the guy all the players were like bouncing up the pitch, and like there was one player who couldn't, he was like me, he couldn't get like 3 or 4 in a row up the pitch, and you had to go back and start it again. But all the players were like pretty good. Zinchenko was brilliant, and we were raving about him. And this poor old class dunce was Gabriel. He could only bounce it 3 or 4 times. He couldn't get out of his own penalty box before he'd lose the ball. So he doesn't have this super sophisticated technique, but with what he's got, he's really crafted a game, and he can pass. He's got quality. He's quality on the ball. He's got vision for getting to the back without being Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's carved out a game that's really quite complete now. So yeah.
And so, Clive, we're 1-0 up, which is very nice. We're kind of on top. Now, this is where, for me, the emotion... I'd like to watch the game back. I don't know if I'll have time, because the emotion here really felt to me, and maybe it's because I've got to be in my bonnet about this, but I've just got this feeling at the moment that what we do, we get on top, we score, we look good for a second. I think there were some breakaways we didn't take advantage of. Maybe a few times Eza just wanted that touch out of his feet a little bit too much. I felt we eased off, though. Did you, leading up to the Chelsea equaliser, did you feel like we eased off, or do you think that perhaps doesn't give credit to Chelsea?
I think couple of things to touch on there. Just briefly going back to the set piece angle, it's quite interesting that we scored a set piece goal. We haven't scored one for a while.
Leeds, suddenly, I think, was the last time, yeah.
And suddenly the debate today is about the ugliness of football. Arsenal scoring set piece goals. In fact, I think Liverpool scored 3 goals on set piece at the weekend, but it's okay. When Arsenal do it, oh my goodness, what's happened to the game? Slot's got an interview out there right now and saying he doesn't enjoy watching Premier League football. And we are the flag bearers of the direction of the game, which is far more data-driven, ugly, grappling in boxes, things like that. And the fact that we have somebody that can really take advantage of that in Gabriel and others, and a good coach to make it happen. It's funny that all the teams around Europe are doing the same thing, trying to take advantage. It's not just Arsenal, it's across the whole league. A number of set-piece goals in the league has already matched last season, and we've got so much more. We've got a quarter to go as such. So
Chelsea are very good at them as well, and they weren't just good at them in this game, Clive, and they had that front post routine. I think we worked it out in the second half when we worked out what was going on, but they were doing that thing where they were dragging someone, I can't remember which player, but they were like faking to do a short corner and then sending that player to the front post, and a little bit of a psychological routine. But
exactly, we miss Havertz in that front zone, Tim, because he's the best at it. Rice, I don't think Rice is good as that. I don't think he's super great in his box defensively, in the air, shall we say. I don't think he's great. And so that front post zone, my boy was in the ground. He called me to say we better sort that front post out, and bang, they've scored. You know what I mean? And he actually said Hincapie doesn't want to head it. That's what he actually said, those words. And next minute, Hincapie scored the own goal. I thought, mate, you're pretty good, right? So and so I don't think we managed that well, but we got there. And I think that was a theme for the game for me. We managed to fix and solution during the game, and until eventually we won it, really. So that was my feelings on that side of things. But Chelsea as a whole, they're interesting. They're an interesting team, and they've got an interesting persona as like that plucky kid that wants to show the big brother that I'm here and I'm bringing my best to you, and I'm going to kick you, I'm going to push you, I'm going to show you no respect. And we managed to manage them just about, and the fact that I felt we always would, maybe that would sound really stupid if Raya didn't make that save at the end, but I think we managed them. But I hope we learned some things about ourselves in this moment. And your point about when we go one up, I think that's been a theme for a little while, Tim. I'm not sure we have a plan for when we go one up, almost, unless we're flowing. And I think in this game, I just felt I don't say we eased off. I think we just waited for the next good thing to happen. And I think the referee stopped us on counter-attacks a few times with silly, stupid calls. That got people antsy. It almost brought them back into it. The fact that they were having situations, we were trying to get the ball out quickly. They were open to the counter, and they were trying to stop us doing it. So that was a plan we couldn't really do. And we got lost. We got lost in that little sort of moment there with the crowd getting antsy and the referee doing dumb stuff because he's not a good ref. And we got lost. We sort of lost our focus until we conceded. It's like, wow, geez. When you're going 1-1, 1-1 against Spurs, they have one touch in our box. 1-1 at half-time against Chelsea. And we think, hold on, how's this happened? Apart from those corners sort of thing. So I'm not sure we're quite learning that lesson. It's easy for me to say, we should just go 2-3 up. What's our plan to go there? What's our plan to go there?
It almost feels like, and I'll bring you back in here, Paul, it's almost a bit like, I guess, boxing, right? And like you knock the guy down. And what do you do after you've knocked the guy down? And it feels a little bit like we kind of just back off a little bit, to your point, Clive. We don't quite have that plan for like, right, I'm going to go right back in and and finish this. And like you say, it's easier said than done. And I respect that Chelsea are a good team. I think, we were talking about how they play out from the back. But because they are a player trading corporation first and a sports team second, they don't have good defenders and a good goalkeeper because they don't spend money on those players, because those players don't trade for a lot of money. They spend money on guys you can sell for a lot of money. But Paul, you wanted to come in on that. And I guess, around like Chelsea's set piece threat, they have, in Reece James, they have someone who can really deliver. And just the feeling building up to that equaliser where, I mean, they could have had a penalty. Really, with Declan Rice, and David Raya makes a really, really good save, the first of a few he makes in the game. You're on mute.
Yeah, you're right, I am. You had me laughing when you were talking about, what business they're in. The classic, what business? Import, export. They're
yes, they're exporters.
Yeah, import, export. That's the business they're in. Moving stuff around. So I think it's really interesting listening to Clive diagnose it. And I agree that after we scored the goal, it didn't feel like we were on the cusp of scoring another goal. But when I look at our busyness, we did lots of stuff. And I think it comes back to the Arteta's basics. The B in basics means both boxes. And we did a lot of things before they got their goal. We're very, very busy. All sorts of stuff. 1v1s with Gyökeres, Yuri Timber. Like, there was good stuff in it all the way up till the box. Yuri Timber and Saka. Like, if I look at things that I think worked fairly well, we got the ball to Gyökeres in interesting situations a few times where he was 1v1 with the defender. We had Timber and Saka. Those firing off people's neurons, and they're remembering the patterns now of what we actually did during this time. That's when we were doing it. That's when we were busiest. We scored our goal. We kind of almost kicked the game off proper at that stage, and we kept getting down the other end. But as we got to the box, we didn't get the ball into the box or the ball on the end of the box, so we were very busy between our goal and their goal. And their goal was kind of out of nowhere, outside of a ball or two that Reece James put in. We were running the show, but to your analogy, Tim, what did we do after we knocked them down? We jabbed them and we went back to kind of punching them in the body. We didn't feel... I don't think the option to slug them was there, because obviously we were trying to do that. We were a little bit at arm's length of the box, and maybe from our own craft. And that's why you want Eze there, and that's why you want Trossard there, and we should have had enough. But I think this is a one-off game, and I'm going to give them a bit of a pass this time around, although we've seen this before, in that one of the things Arteta's talked about is being unpredictable, and I think this was an unpredictable game plan. It wasn't build up from the back. It wasn't Zubimendi and Rice in a double pivot. We were quite happy to lump it up, and we saw it multiple times from Raya. We did not do any kind of build up from the back. We would go longish or play from deep through, and we were happy to get the ball ahead of us, press, go for turnovers. And like, it could have broken a little different way, but I think it's a one-off game. One of the things I liked about it, looking back on it, especially in the first half, was Arteta did what he said he wants to do, which is be unpredictable, have different game plans for different situations. This was not how we played in many games. We lumped it forward. We tried to press up the pitch. It's why Rice and Zubimendi were where they were, why Trossard was in, and we're quite happy to cluster and that's why from time to time the ball would pop out, they'd break through it, and they'd be up their right wing, our left wing, unopposed till they reached our back line, and we generally snuffed them out. That was kind of, I think, our first half game plan. A bit the second half, but certainly the first half. I can now close my eyes and think, oh, okay, I know roughly the dynamic that was going on between those two teams. We lump it forward, press them, push for a turnover. They would or wouldn't have the ball pop out to them, then play down their right wing. We'd get it back from our centre backs, and off we go again.
Yeah. I think just got to say one thing on this, Tim, because as Paul was talking there, I thought to myself, you know what? What's my memory of things breaking down in this game? You know, because I felt that we were trying, but it kept breaking down.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, you know what? We never got to zone 14 very often. Let me have a little look. You know what? Scott's already nailed it, right?
Yeah, three touches there or something in the whole game.
He's already nailed it. Literally, I've just seen a graph of it. I think it's 4 touches in that area. But how many times can you remember it going into that area and they read it? They read it and they stole in front and then moved away. So it's back to the word repeat. We tried to repeat what we did against Spurs. I'm afraid their analysts watched what we did against Spurs. They think we're using words like proximity between Eze and Gyökeres. They stuck a couple of people in there. I said, we know where you're going, and we're going to step in front and stop you combining. And then that put pressure as a watcher. You think, we're not getting Eze in the game. Then when he gets in the game, and there's a slight touch that's wrong, or way to pass that's not right, a frustration naturally develops. And what really you should be thinking, or what I'm trying to think, is perfection doesn't exist. Other teams are quite good. Other teams are trying to stop us. We have to have an expectation that actually we are seen as a benchmark team, and people want to prove their worth against us. And so they're going to watch the games when we stick 4 in someone's net and try to stop us doing exactly the same thing. Hence why in this game, I was thinking about a Martinelli on the left or a Madueke on the left to throw a new shape at them. To say, now deal with this. Deal with this now. We've gone away from our box 4. You now deal with a chalk on boots guy that's going to run your brilliant player who doesn't really want to run. So let's run him and pull him out the middle and get him on that side, you know. And this is the joy of football, isn't it? It's managing what a team does, changing, adapting, and then changing your plan. And I tell you, Tim, I don't know if you saw it, because I know you're a watcher of Arteta like me, but Trossard did something in that game that didn't go well. And Arteta put his hand up.
The emotional sub.
It was the quickest sub. That board was up before Martinelli got his top off. It was so quick. And I thought, about time. Let's do it. Minute 56, bang. We need to stretch this team out, mate. We need to get them running backwards. We need to change the rhythm. And we did, right? But that needs to be okay to us. It does, doesn't it, really? Because do you think people are going to rock up, sit in our dressing rooms, have a look around the stands, wave to their families, and just watch us do what we want? It's not happening, right? And we adapted, and I thought it was really, really good.
Paul?
Yeah, so I think I'm a little different on this. Like, I agree with all of that. I think Trossard, first off, he had an interesting role in attack and in countering what they were trying to do and where he was playing. I actually think a lot of what he did kind of worked. And I agree with Clive's analysis, which is, you know, James is he's kind of a force of nature. He's a bit of a physical freak when he stays fit, and he's got that wand of a foot. And I think Trossard worked his socks off, and in many regards, mostly neutralized it. But it was one of those games where it was almost like you'd brief him beforehand. Look, Leo, this is not a game that you're going to come out feeling great at or looking great at unless something breaks for you. I think he worked his socks off. Interestingly, and I agree with all of that analysis, and I agree with he thought he had a moment where he's like, okay, get Leo off. And I think he might have slightly misjudged that, because Martinelli comes on. He has a torrid time until he rinses Neto. He suddenly finds he's lost in that area of the pitch, because that's where it's all going on.
Can I just say, Paul, on that? Although Trossard had a bad matchup day, his game was okay, right? Yeah. In this day, we needed him to be more than okay. But the problem is, I wouldn't have chosen anybody else to start this game. Yeah. You know, if Havertz was fit, then maybe Eze could protect that ball inside, etc.
It had to be him, because it was such a clever area of the pitch. That's where all their intelligence was. I think he did better than we think in neutralizing.
I think Reece James did better than we wanted. Right, but I still wouldn't have chosen anybody else to do that interior role as that interior fourth creator as such. I would not have chosen anybody else to do it. But I was so pleased the manager recognised this is potentially not working anymore, so we do something else. You know, and
theory versus execution, right? It was the execution wasn't quite there. Yeah,
exactly.
And I think what you saw when Martinelli came on, if you go and look at that five or so minutes before he just does Neto, you can see why he was brought on and what Arteta was hoping to happen. But you also see what Trossard was doing in that area, because Trossard was jumping to all the right spots to slow it down, and Martinelli wasn't. He was, and I'm not knocking Martinelli, he was coming into this like it was all going on. It was like three guys, not one, he needed to mark, and he was running up and down, and he was always in the wrong spot for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. And you suddenly realized...
Then he sorted it out then. Sorted it out. And they had something to think about, and that's the game. That's the many games within a game, as the coaches say. The many games within the game. It was really good.
That Trossard, because I've said this a lot of times before, right? Arteta makes a lot of emotional subs where it's like something happened to Madueke a few weeks ago, ball rolls under his foot, off, come on you come, like tracksuits flying off everywhere in the corner of my eye. And that was, I admit, I completely agree. I think with Trossard, I completely understood the idea of the role. I think he probably carried it out. The execution wasn't there. But one of the times I lost my rag when Zubimendi tried to pass back to Raya.
On his left foot.
Yeah, and it was
it's a right foot pass, mate. Come on.
And I lost my rag with that Trossard pass, because I don't know what it was, because his execution's usually really good. He kept it was like he was shooting. And I was just like, why are you walloping the ball so hard at everyone? Like, it did feel like quite a lot of passes went astray, but I definitely, like, I understood. And you're right, like, who else are you going to pick to do that? Like you say, maybe Eze could.
Yeah.
Well, Eze probably could, but you're definitely going to pick Trossard for that role. I think what we'll do here, because I did have this discussion down on my running list, on my running order.
Sorry, mate.
No, it's great. I wanted to have this discussion. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of it either. What we'll do is we'll take a little beat, and Elliot's going to read us some messages from some very important sponsors who are going to make your life better. And after that, we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more perhaps about some other individual performances and the second half right after this. Okay, welcome back to part 2 of the ArsenalVision podcast with me, your host, Tim Stillman. And we had that Trossard discussion, which I think was something I really, really kind of had pinned. And I think there are a few other performances I'd like to get to in a bit. I think Hincapié, for example, I think that deserves a discussion. I think Eze and Gyökeres, we didn't really discuss the lineup per se, but we kept the same lineup. And I think it's kind of worth talking about them. However, before we do that, let's talk more generally about the start of the second half. And this is, Clive, if I come to you first, this is where I did start to get quite antsy. Like I said, like the Zubimendi, usually in the ground, like when someone does what Zubimendi did and Trossard does, usually like I feel that annoyance that everyone else feels, but I swallow it. You know, it's just like, right, this will all become like a brain tumor or a heart attack one day, but like I keep it inside. Whereas on Sunday, I didn't. Like I shouted at both of them, and I felt. I think for the first time this season, I felt that like, yeah, I feel antsy, and I'm beginning to shout and get annoyed. And the start of the second half was pretty nervy. Again, Raya makes a good save from Enzo Fernandez. Felt to me like Chelsea were travelling through our middle too easily.
Yeah.
Again, and like you say, like Declan Rice was doing some yoga in the second half, like every time the play went dead, and it went dead quite a lot as well. And then, Raya makes another amazing save where they get that front post flick on, and Joao Pedro has got almost the whole goal to aim at. And I saw Joe Hart talk about it on Match of the Day, and actually he wasn't doing, other than the last Raya save, he didn't do a big technical breakdown like he usually did. But when he talked about this save from Joao Pedro and the one from Declan Rice's elbow, he was saying, look how much effort he is making to get that ball. And we'll talk about Raya later, because I think there's a bit of a climax there with a good save at the end. But how did you see that first kind of, maybe up until the second goal, the second half? Or do you think, obviously the stadium was very nervy? I felt the team looked pretty nervy and a bit lost. And I was surprised by that, because usually my thinking is I back Arteta to sort stuff out at half time,
Yeah, so he wasn't the only one. People around me were a little bit concerned about the start for the second half. I don't know what's wrong with me on this day team. I wasn't. Last time I felt like this was 2005 FA Cup final, where I thought we battered Man United when I got home and rewatched it, and that wasn't the case. So I'm thinking, I just had this feeling that we would sort it out, but it was a little bit concerning that we weren't in charge, and I wanted us to obviously get in charge of the game and finish them off, and maybe for people in the ground, particularly with the Zubimendi mistake, that people just suddenly got the Man United home game flood over them. And I think that was the thing that happened. Again, normally I would see that at my end, but I think it was at the other end to me, clock end side, so I didn't get the view, so I didn't have the fear, and I didn't have the fear that everyone else had. I thought, what's he doing that for? Do we need to do this? We can't be giving this away, because our mistakes leading to goals is getting quite high, that number is, because we barely give anybody anything apart from stuff that we give them. Let's not do that today. And when I saw it close up in detail, a pass that normally goes to a right footer that comes into him, and he goes out to his left as he's facing the goal, but he took it with his left foot leaning away, which is bang for an under hit, off balance, and Raya reads it and gets there first, and I think people got a bit angry because they thought, come on lads, we're better than this. Let's not do this again. Let's not do the Man United again, because we're better than them until we gave that goal away. Let's not do this again. So there was a slight concern. Again, I have to go back to the fact that Rafinha wants to get his stripes against Arteta. He wants to. He's lost 3 games, all against Arsenal. And he wants to get his stripes. His last 2 games he drew, and this was the 3rd game. So the last 9 points, have got 2 points out of 9. And he wanted to get into us, and he wanted to show us different shapes. And I think he pushed on a little bit more. At the start of the second half, they got a bit more aggressive. They were looking to jump. Caicedo was looking to jump. He couldn't wait till we went inside. And I felt we lacked a bit of bravery inside, a bit of pass accuracy. And they were getting the steps now on Gyökeres and Eze. They were running with them, and they're a bit more in charge of those races, which I didn't feel they were in the first half. And suddenly we're looking for exits, aren't we? Trossard's inside, so he's not an exit. Reece James got his number. Saka always does well, but I even felt that Hato did okay against him on occasions, Give him the respect. He wasn't a total domination. He's still a great target for us. So that was the period when I thought we need to do something else. We need another exit. Martinelli or Madueke was my choice. It just took a little while to get there, and we didn't suffer in that period, thankfully, by conceding. And then, of course, we then get the goal, and we move on from there.
Paul, before we get on to the second goal, and I guess the goal and the red card. I mean, we'll come on to it later. I was going to say, I wonder. I felt like Arsenal were more streetwise in this game overall, but maybe that's just theme. An outcome bias there. But I wanted to talk about Eze and Gyökeres, because obviously they start this game. I wasn't surprised by that. I have to say, one thing I'm glad I didn't shout, I just said to the person next to me, I didn't realise Odegaard wasn't in the squad, because every 2 minutes at the beginning of that second half, I was like, get Odegaard on, get him on, get him on, get him on right now. I want that ball under control.
Yeah, so why was that? Because he's come up a lot in people's minds now. So that tells you what we didn't have. So why was that thought in your mind?
Because I wanted the ball under control. I felt like the
Yeah.
game was too transitional, it's too chaotic, and I wanted that 300,000 passes type thing. And Ezra's not going to give you that. But Ezra and Gyökeres, Paul, I mean, obviously, like the big kind of debate before this game is, have they... well, Gyökeres, I think, has been turning a corner for a little while. For Ezra, that's not the case. It was the Tottenham game. And it's a bit like, how much was that dock to Tottenham? And actually, can they take this on against a proper football team now, rather than Spurs? I felt in this game, Paul, I felt Ezra and Gyökeres, like, I felt it was nearly there. It was nearly there. Like, I didn't have that feeling of like, I can't find them, I can't see them. I did think it was probably significant that a lot of Ezra's kind of shooting opportunities or near shooting opportunities were on his left foot. And I do wonder if Chelsea were a bit streetwise about that, about not letting him get the ball on his right foot, unlike the idiots that Tottenham have in defence. And I don't know. What did you make of their kind of performance? I just had that kind of, I can see them. I think one of them might score, but at the same time, I couldn't point to anything tangible there. What did you feel about those two?
Yeah, I think that's right. They kind of flattered to deceive a little bit. Maybe that's a little harsh in terms of its framing, but they were all, I'm with you, they were almost there. Gyökeres had maybe 3 1v1s where he kind of ran into a guy, lost the ball on the edge of the box. He's like, he just needs a couple more of those. But he got a couple more of those, and the same thing happened. And Eza kind of did a clever pass off to somebody, and then the somebody doesn't do that much with it because they're not in the greatest position. And like, it all kind of fizzled out a bit. And my take on it was, we need to put a little bit of respect on Chelsea and how they were set up. If they're not making a mistake, they're very, very good. And when they're big, they're physical, they're young, they're high energy. And I think here's where I think Arteta gets should get a lot of credit in this game, which was the game we might have liked to have had would have suited Chelsea. They would have loved us to kind of build up and they go at us. He instead said, I'm going to set it up so we can go at them. Now, this part of the second half, the start of the second half, is not it fits into each team will have a period where it's their time. And like the start of the second half, they were getting more and more of that, play it down the right-hand side, which is why eventually Arteta decided the thing to do was to take Trossard off. I'm not convinced that I can see why he felt that way. I can see that Trossard wasn't having the greatest game. I also think he was probably still the right guy to stick around for a bit, although Clive does not think that. No. And Martinelli showed why you would want to get Martinelli on the pitch about 5 minutes after he came on. So I think in the bigger, you got the big board and Napoleon's there with the generals and they got the sticks and they're moving the things around. Like Napoleon gets it right? That's the sucker punch move with Martinelli over the top. But the busy stuff in the battle, I think I'm right. I think you keep Trossard on a bit more because he was doing the things. Clive's shaking his head again. I'm wrong.
Oh, you're right, but you're not quite
I'm right. But
this is about
in the small way, but in the big way.
Physicality. This was about physicality. Yep. This is all it was. Mate, it's all it is. It's not about the player's performance. Yep. It's about, you know what, we needed something more physical in this game to challenge them. That's what it was. Nothing more than that, mate. Nothing more than that.
And ultimately, it turns out to be right because there's the Martinelli moment, but there's also, before we get the goal, I noticed this a lot from our corners. Before we get a goal from a corner, we have a burst of a few minutes of really good play. And just before the second corner, we get a goal off. Rice puts in a great ball, and we get the free kick from some good play in midfield, breaking through. The number of clever tactical fouls on their side, which were not clever. They just basically took our guys out. If you go back and look at it from that standpoint, how many times do they have to rugby tackle our guys because we were breaking through? And I think some of our best play was lost by the fact that in football, you can take a guy out. Now, in the end, it cost them because their red cards started to mount up, even if Neto's wasn't that kind of his first yellow may not have been that kind of a card, but the second one certainly was. That was a rugby tackle. And they'd a lot of rugby tackles in this game. And we might say, well, why weren't we better in that second half? Because you can rugby tackle us. And that's what we were doing. We were either breaking on the counter or we were getting upfield to force turnovers. That was our game plan. And if you're trying to look back on the game and be more satisfied with our control, this was not a game we tried to control. We didn't want lack of control. We didn't want a full-on basketball match. We wanted to control by getting it up the pitch and force turnovers or hit on the counter when the ball broke our way after they'd run at us. So it was a bit basketball-y, but with some level of control in certain zones. And our control was get players up in and around the ball. And that started the second half was a period in which we couldn't quite do that. So they were starting to run the show until they weren't.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation as well about, and I know you've made this point before about how Arsenal on set pieces, they kind of, it's like a build up, isn't it? Like you
There
get
is
a
a little
couple. I think at Fulham, I remember you saying that like just before that Trossard one, it was like that went in, there were a couple before and you're like, it's almost like the slow beating of a drum or something, or just like seeing the cavalry come over the hill and you're a bit like, oh no, they've all got
I think it's something that lost by the it's lost in the narrative of, oh, we're only a set piece team, in that I often see some really good play, some clever stuff that almost turns into something that earns you that corner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because Rice swings one in, Sanchez comes out. I mean, he gets his fist to that free kick, but I mean, he might as well have been playing pin the tail on the donkey. He might as well have had a blindfold on. And I think that gave us some encouragement. And Clive, we do take the lead again via our favorite kind of our favorite avenue. And again on Match of the Day, Leon Osman was talking about this, and it's quite. I think we're quite defensive, aren't we, about like the set piece kind of discussion and is this ruining football and all of that. But actually, when you watch, actual like pundits and journalists and not like 12-year-olds on social media, like Leon Osman was saying, like, this is why they are where they are, because they have this weapon and they use it so well. It's the 9th winning goal from a set piece for Arsenal this season. That is the most any Premier League team has ever managed in the season, and we've still got nearly 3 months left. I don't know what Robert Sanchez was complaining about afterwards. Yeah. And this is where Chelsea lose the game, because Arsenal are more streetwise. Chelsea had already had Fernandez hit. They had 2 players booked for dissent in this game. So to your point, Paul, about some of the kind of cynical tackling, and you've got like Caicedo's a bit of a shin kicker. If you've had 9 red cards this season and you get 2 guys booked for dissent in the same game, you can kind of see what the problem is. And and Urian Timber as well, a really good weapon from these set pieces. He scored from quite a few. But do you think it's hindsight or outcome bias, Clive, that maybe we were just a bit more streetwise, and that couple of minutes where we get the goal and then the red card happens really kind of proved that? Or do you think just the margins went for us on this occasion?
Well, as we walk into the ground, I wasn't thinking about set piece goals, to be honest with you. And it's quite interesting. That's all what we talk about afterwards, and because we've looked okay recently, but I haven't felt that we've done very well with them, and but in this game, it's funny, like in some games, I watch rugby, as everyone knows, and there are games and there are tight games, and in tight games, people revert to the drop goal, for example, to keep the scoreboard ticking. And in the tightest games, these margins around set pieces really matter. Because basically, let's be honest, what's happening with the game is everyone understands how to play off the ball. Everyone understands how to create a block. And if they're going to create a low block and you can force set pieces come into play. We all know the strategy now. Why are we pretending it doesn't exist? It's a byproduct of us being much better at defending as a set of coaches, and particularly in the Premier League, with the most intense physical league, and people can win duels, if particularly in small spaces, consistently over 90 minutes. And when they get tired, we've got 5 substitutes to bring on to keep the energies high. And so set pieces are going to be a natural byproduct of this. I'm just reading as we're recording that VAR's going to be introduced soon to make sure that when a corner's given, it's a real corner. What is that telling you? That's telling you that set pieces are really important, so important now that we're treating them as something almost akin to a penalty, so we've got to make sure it's being given. But it's true, isn't it? Who would have thought of that? Who would have thought that we care that much about a corner, that we're bringing in video assistant referee technology to manage that situation? And that's not an anti-Arsenal rule. We might get a few more corners on the back of it. That is where football is heading. And I think, I just think it's interesting. There's some good data out there saying what the percentage of set pieces are per goal scored, etc. And we're there towards the top end, but not completely the top end. So yeah, these margins are critically important, Tim, and they will become more important as the season goes on. But it's almost as if it feels to me as if this is the reason why they're still in the race. This is the reason why they're still there, because they're able to score first goals and last goals with this trick. For me, get with the program, mate. Let's not pretend that certain details don't matter in the game. We're not going to ignore them. We're not going to ignore them. Everybody's going to look at every single possible margin to get a result. It's
not just us, is it? Like, like Liverpool, Chelsea, United, they've all got good, even Spurs.
Yeah,
decent like set piece record like that kind of shows you it is a league wide thing. And to be fair, I do think it's discussed like that, but we probably get a little bit defensive as Arsenal fans.
We're a bit sensitive, aren't we?
Because and sometimes it is, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I think we see a wider discussion about set pieces and we assume people are having a dig about Arsenal. Paul, in a minute we're going to talk a little bit about perhaps what happened after we get the goal and the red card and maybe what should have happened and what didn't happen. We'll definitely talk about David Raya at the end because I think he definitely deserves that. But I was saying off mic before we started recording, I did listen to the instant reaction, but I listened to it on the way home after I'd had 5 pints or so. So I didn't absorb much of it. It was definitely something I listened to that went into my ears, but I don't think it really stayed there. However, I think rightly, I recall you had a lot of good things to say about Pierre Hincapié in this game, who I think certainly for me, until quite recently, I thought he looks okay, but do we want to commit a lot of resource to this when we've got 2 left backs already? Like, does this really raise our ceiling? I think it's fair to say in the last couple of weeks, I'm really beginning to see this player now. And I'm thinking, this is what they saw when they were watching the videos like from Leverkusen. And actually, he does show a different face. And the fact is, Calafiori, I think, was one of our best performers in the first half of the season. And we were talking a lot about how we miss him in attack. And unused sub now, and we're not talking about him. I think Hincapié, it made me think, Paul, a little bit of Ben White, in terms of it took me a couple of months to see that player when we bought him, but when I saw him, I couldn't miss it. And I thought Hincapié was one of our better players on the day. Do you? I know you agree with that.
Yeah. I'm enjoying getting this spot because it's really Clive who spotted the Hincapié development arc here. But hey, I may have arrived late to it, but I'm going to arrive strong. So I've given him, he got my stock rising the last 2 games, which confused people, I think, at least in the Tottenham match, in that there were probably a couple of other candidates who stood out. But like he's just screaming to me that he's establishing himself in terms of what he offers this team. And Calafiori, I was describing him as Arteta's new favorite toy. He's that toy you get at Christmas, and like you've forgotten all your other toys. And I'm sure that's still true. I'm sure he still is excited about putting Calafiori in his team, and maybe Calafiori still, like, physically he's buying him a little time. If not, it's the fact that there are games that really suit Hincapié, and there's plenty of them. And I can see why this would be like Calafiori's done really well 1v1 defensively this season, really from the get-go, which was my concern about him last season, and now he's really fixed that. But if you look at who was up against Hincapié in this, it was their two best players from that standpoint. It was Neto and it was James. Like, they may have caused trouble from that side, but they did not cause trouble for Hincapié. Outside
they
of
caused
that,
trouble coming inside, not going.
Yeah.
He got nothing out of him.
Yeah, and they tried time, and they just stopped. I mean, and Neto's so fast. From a standing, like, he just loves having his full back on toast, and like he stopped the ball, and now he's he can do you anyway. He couldn't do Hincapié, and like he's just you're not going to get past him. And is he old school? I don't know. We've been talking about old school.
He gave me a bit of when he was kind of, particularly because, to your point, Clive, we swapped sides. I don't usually see the left back in the second half. I did this time. I kept seeing him fly past me, and I got a big Nigel Winterburn vibe, actually. Yeah. So I think so, Paul. Yeah,
and he's got that bit of the agricultural about him. Like, the only critique outside of, I think he should have jumped straight up and early on the corner and known what was coming. Is outside of that moment, there was a couple of times when we were in the attacking motion, and maybe Trossard or Gyökeres was going to run in behind onto his side, and he could have passed the ball in his direction. Generally, his crosses, his deliveries are into dangerous areas that people can get on the end of. He's really developing. He probably has that side of the game, but he's developing it within the Arsenal context to be quite a two-way fullback. And
if you play as a wing-back for Xabi Alonso's Bayer Leverkusen, I hadn't seen that going forward side. I felt like he was a good defender, but I hadn't really seen much going forward. But I'm beginning to see that now.
Lovely, and I like the way you worked in that the back three thing. So we're taking all of the things that Clive has been well early on and stealing it before he can get in on him. So really enjoying this. But yeah, I think he's stood out to me in the definition of a stock rising and falling that we do on the instant reaction, which is not who was the best player on, but who has come from kind of furthest down to up, or from up to way up. He's just gone on in leaps and strides. And when you look at how many games, how many competitions we've got for the rest of the season, if Calafiori's fit and he's fit, that's, from Arteta's standpoint, he's like, oh, my choices. What do I want to hit them with next? Who gets 70 minutes and 20 minutes? Now, we haven't done much of that. Hincapié is so good, he's getting the 90 minutes basically all the time. But I'm still convinced Arteta loves Calafiori, and he's a different kind of weapon. And like, if you're the opposing manager setting up to play Arsenal, the one thing you got to say is, oh shit, I got to work out, are they playing Calafiori or Hincapié? Because those are two really different ways of playing. And I need to think about how I'm going to play against those.
Yeah, and had Declan Rice not had to come off, maybe one of that, maybe would have seen either Mosquera at right back or Calafiori come on at left back. We kind of lost the substitution there, because we had to take Rice off. I mean, Clive, unless you want to add on Hincapié, I want to talk about what happened after the red card, because I'm thinking the goal goes in. Chelsea, again, it was down my side. The second Martinelli set off for that ball, and by the way, to get to it in the first place, when you watch the highlights, you'll see him beating Neto, but to actually initially pick the ball up on the corner of our area, my word, I haven't seen anyone go like that since Theo Walcott. It was actually took me aback. I was like, oh, he might get. Oh my God, he's got there by about 3 yards. How's he done that? It's just like a straight line run, but. And so, and the red card happens, which didn't surprise me because, it's Chelsea's 9th red of the season. They've lost a lot of points as well. They've been in winning positions when they've had red cards. They're clearly too emotional. Pedro Neto's too emotional. Enzo Fernandez is too emotional. Cucurella didn't play in this game. He's too emotional. Look at how they reacted to the goal. Robert Sanchez doing his nut, and you look back at it and it's like, what do you think happened? Like the invisible man, like, you know, like took your gloves off or something. But after the red, and so I wasn't comfortable. That would be massively overstating it. I thought, here we go. Okay. After the red card, Arsenal had 35% possession. They made 56 passes to Chelsea's 115. Do you think that was nerves? Do you think maybe Arsenal do have a bit of a low technical level, perhaps when they don't have Odegaard? Do you think maybe Rice coming off contributed to that? Not like a massively technical passer, but someone who's on the ball a lot and someone who puts out fires quite a lot. What do you put? I think it's fair to say it was pretty lackluster after the red card. What did you put that down to?
Okay, I'm not sure I've got this one, to be honest. I felt psychologically, when you score and the other team goes down to 10 men very, very quickly, what did we all feel? Game over. Yeah, we all felt it, didn't we? Game over, we got them now, it's over, it's the end. But actually, the players have actually got to make that happen. They can't think it. And what I started to see a lot more, particularly, was Saka a lot closer to me than I want to see the North Bank end, which means you are no longer pressing higher up. You know, and that was my first indicator of our position on the pitch. It was less aggressive. So now I'm thinking, okay, why are we doing that? Are we just falling into that? Or are we waiting for a counter to free Martinelli, getting behind them? I wasn't sure what we were doing, Tim, to be honest. But I do know we stopped passing the ball accurately and we had no exit plans and the ball was coming back very, very quickly and we were not getting after it. And so in some ways, we almost, by not playing, it didn't matter how many men they had because we weren't playing. What should happen when you have the one-man advantage is you keep the ball until you find a spare man. But we decided, to protect the territory, to protect the goal, to protect our position in the game. And this is where you have to say, whether I felt it or not, this is where going second after Man City, you've got the result to extend to 5 points. I don't think you can deny that maybe we played the scoreboard, you know, and
I think City did that on Saturday, by the way, as well.
They did. They know it's about points accumulation. So we've got the points. Let's accumulate them. So what are we doing? We're analysing how we play. Well, actually, this ain't about that anymore. This is about getting the win by any means necessary. It's as simple as that. And during that period, we can discuss, do we need a plan, a better plan? Do we need to play a bit more? Do we need to go 500 passes? Who's the best player to have 500 passes who doesn't care where the ball is? Oh, Brighton Odegaard, we missed him. You know, Eze is much more of a second striker. We don't want him to come deep. We want him to go long. We weren't really going long and retaining it in there. We were inaccurate. And so we lost our way a little bit. I need to have a little close look at centre mid to see what happened. You know, I am feeling, Tim, I don't know what you think, but I look at the back line and I felt this for a while, so it must be part of our strategy in defending, that our centre mid number 6 particularly drops into the back line and they're there a long time and they do really well. So dual numbers are great, etc. And they win the headers, particularly outside the box. But when you're trying to get out, you need 3 lines. You need 4 lines almost to pass up the stairs. Do you see what I mean? But if you're reduced to 2 lines almost, when you win it, where are you going? You know, so you got to drop away towards your goal to make the pitch bigger, which they were very good at pressing. I thought João Pedro was excellent. You know, in this game, he was the best centre forward on the pitch. And so we lacked a plan to exit. I think maintaining our line depth, the depth in our lines, allows us to play is really important and don't fall away. So there's a byproduct of why we don't play. So you imagine you've got the goalkeeper, centre-backs, that's 2 lines. You sent your mids, 3 lines, then you're attacking end 4 lines. We dropped to 3 lines very, very quickly, sometimes on occasions to 2. So we didn't have the depth to expand out. I think that's behind it. So my feeling is, can we maintain our position, particularly in centre mid, to be them guys, to be the first pass out, so we can play the next line, then we can control the game a lot more. And what Odegaard would do in this scenario, he would come back into the back line and take the ball to get us a +1. Fullbacks go higher. We didn't seem to want to leave our fullback areas. We didn't seem to want to come in and then go up. So we didn't have the exits wide. We didn't have the exits through the middle, depth. And Chelsea did well in that period. So I think it's on us. I think it's a learning. But it's been there for a little while, hasn't it? In various guises. So one for us to get right, mate. It's going to cost otherwise.
Yeah, I do think there was an element of fatigue to it. And like I said earlier, perhaps if we hadn't lost Rice, we could have subbed one of those fullbacks and we could have got Galafiori on, or we could have got Mosquera on and, someone had the legs to position themselves a little bit higher. But Paul, particularly as we look ahead to Wednesday, I knew this was going to happen because I had an argument on our Discord about, Norgard potentially being a bit redundant as a squad player. And now Odegaard's injured, and we don't really, as they said, a knee injury, but I don't think we know much more than that at the moment. Obviously, Mikel Merino, I think he would have. Again, I know it's always like the guy you don't have is the guy that will definitely solve it all. But I felt like Mikel Merino would have been in this game because Norgard comes on. I think he plays 2 passes in 20 minutes, and he's not like a Jorginho, I don't think, in terms of like just getting the ball under control. I mean, do you have worries going forwards if like Odegaard's out and Rice is out on Wednesday, and without Merino, suddenly it does feel like we're getting a bit thin in there and we're having to play guys like maybe Norgard and Eza who have their qualities, but perhaps control is not their forte.
Yeah, though I'd say with Norgurgle,
Norginho.
I haven't seen, I haven't seen anything from Zubimendi in recent times that makes me think we'll have less control than Zubimendi. He's quite low touch. I thought he'd be kind of the player that had at least another 20, 25 touches. I thought he'd be more like Arteta playing the DM.
Mm-hmm.
He's not particularly. He doesn't, he has a role. He plays in that area of the pitch, which is handy because that's where he stands. But he's not the guy who demands the ball, moves it around. He's this, this hub and spoke model where everything passes through Zubimendi. Rice isn't exactly that guy. Between the two of them, they share the passing or whatever. We don't actually. I'm surprised. I thought that's who Zubimendi was. He'd be this guy deeper in the midfield. The traffic lights pointing, moving it around. Everything goes through him except when it doesn't. And it doesn't. That's not quite what he seems to be.
He's
and
a
this game
difficult player to pin down, isn't he? He's a difficult player to like. If you ask me to describe him to someone who'd never watched him, I'm not entirely sure what I'd say.
Yeah, he's not quite that player, and he's given us a lot more in the attacking end or moving into the right 8 and then attacking the box than I ever expected to see from him in the first season. But unfortunately, he's either tired and I don't really understand him, or he's not quite the player I thought he was, where he'd give us this platform and he'd miraculously cover the ground like Arteta did, even though he was a guy of smaller stature and less physical. He still was always where he wanted. Arteta was always where he wanted to be, and he always came out with the ball with his small feet. It didn't matter who. He could go in against 3 big opposing midfielders. Somehow Arteta came out with the ball. And so I'm at an interesting point with Zubimendi, my journey with him, where I'm like, I really like him. I think he's class and quality, but he's not super high touch. So who is when we want that control, and I think that's what happened in this game to some degree, we set up in a way that was even less controlling. It was Rice was central. Zubimendi was over to the right, so we could press forward and go with Enzo and go wherever he needed to be. And he was very much in the opposing end. He wasn't playing the Odegaard role. He was playing something in between, in that space there, and he was pushing and pressing, and like it was very. It was again agricultural. This was not the most sophisticated game of football in terms of our passing and control. But then other games with Zubimendi aren't particularly him pulling all the strings, passing around. People saying, "Oh, he's so boring passing right and left." He's not, because he doesn't, right? He'll make a pass or two. Mostly it's Saliba and Gabriel and playing it around the back, and then a bit of Zubimendi. So I actually think Norgard might give us more control than what we've seen, because he is a bit more that player. It'll be interesting to see how he does. I certainly don't think we'll lose control or lose strings in the midfield. It might be interesting to see a little bit of a different look. I don't know. It's an open book for me that we've got this far in the season. I don't really know what we do in that deeper lying midfield part of the pitch, apart from it's Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori stepping in there, Rice, bit of Zubimendi. It's kind of an amorphous blob. Isn't that is it an amoeba? Isn't that the blobby thing from your biology that kind of changes? A pseudopod. I don't know what our deeper midfield is, but it's kind of this blobby thing that changes shape. It's not. You can't say it's Rodri or it's not. It's Arteta,
Rice, Odegaard, which was three very distinct lines. I think. Yeah,
the profiles are not clear to me.
Yeah, big time. And go on, Clive.
Yeah, we're playing a double pivot, right? So all roles are shared.
Oh, you make it sound so simple.
We're playing a double pivot, so we have to almost erase our brains from what we used to see, where we had
struggling, Clive.
Yeah, the only time we used to play a double pivot with Jorginho and Rice a lot more. Remember that, Tim? Because psychologically, I think they're quite similar in some regards. Zubimendi, but I think what Zubimendi's brought above Jorginho and above what others have offered, Odegaard particularly, and maybe Partey's brought a lot better defensive ability in particularly in the air. Defensive ability is really, really strong. I actually think he's deferring to it too much. That's my feeling. People have been onto him a little bit lately because they want to see a little bit more control, because we're all a bit nervous, right? It's a byproduct of this. We're all nervous, want to see control. Right? So who should be controlling it? That Zubimendi bloke's not doing much. He needs to control it. Actually, he had less touches of Rice in this game. Is Rice really a controller? Well, he's not really a controller, really. He's an impactor on particular moments that are quite spectacular. And so
he's a take-back control guy. That's who Rice is.
Yeah. So he's a momentum changer. Well said, Paul. Changing momentum defensively or offensively. Zubimendi's a little bit more quieter, and he's a bit more of a glue player. And you look at his numbers and tackles; they're always pretty high. But I heard others say this last week, but he covered the most kilometres in a game versus Spurs. So he's the hardest working player. And you mentioned the name Merino. Let's be honest, Merino would be sharing minutes with Zubimendi and Rice. And we are standing there in the ground watching them, Zubimendi and Rice, do stretches during the game. And so we are missing that player, Merino, very, very badly, in my opinion. Very badly. And that will continue. Because as we're going into this fight or die period of the season, Merino is perfect for this. He's efficient. He's combative. He brings the ball in and changes momentum, buys a foul. He's dangerous in the offensive box, and he's brilliant in our box. We are missing him now for this period in particular. We don't miss him if it's as August and the sun was shining and the ball zipping around on a perfect pitch, which it isn't at the moment. This is a time where you need your fighters, because everyone wants to take us out. And so Zubimendi is playing a lot of that role, which is not spectacular. Rice is trying to do a lot of that stuff, which is not spectacular. And we're thinking, where's our controllers? Why aren't we controlling it? We got a third midfielder, also almost a second striker. And so what we're trying to do is to make Trossard almost that extra player to give us control. And in this game, he got nailed. He got nailed on occasion, despite none of us wanting him not to start this game, if that makes sense. I was glad he started. I'm really glad. So he's the guy that needs to offer a bit of control on the ball, take it in tight areas, jink, get away, and then switch the point of the attack. As he was jinking, Reece James was kicking. Caicedo was kicking him. And so it just made it a bit more of a challenge. Or he was under pressure in his execution.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Go ahead.
It's kind of interesting as well because we're not inverting like our fullbacks anymore. There's not like a Lewis
Crazy.
Skelly there. Calafiori kind of does that. Hincapié, as we said, is a little bit more old school on the outside. And actually, Chelsea have stopped doing it really under Rosenior as well. It's a big change from Maresca, where they used to, push Enzo Fernandez. They'd put Enzo Fernandez in the double pivot, push him up. Cucurella would come in, or Reece James would come in. They don't do that. They brought in Santos, and they do proper double pivot football as well, which probably contributed to this being a stodgy game between the penalty areas, to be honest. And Paul, while it was a stodgy game between the penalty areas, in the penalty areas where Arsenal really won the game, we were slightly better at corners than they were. We had a much better goalkeeper than they did. And, Chelsea, one of the consequences of their red card is they clearly had their Garnacho Delap subs, their kitchen sink subs lined up, and they came on 10 minutes later than I think Rosenior would have planned for before the game. But they do come on. We know Garnacho came on in the Carabao Cup and gave us problems. Liam Delap, I'm not sure if he gives you actual football problems, but you might get a black eye, and that's going to impact the way you play, the way you defend. Garnacho does get the ball on his right foot, does get that cross in. Raya makes a really good save again. Joe Hart on Match of the Day did a really good analysis of this because he kept freezing it and he kept saying, as this cross comes in, you don't realise from behind, from the side view, both Gabriel and Joao Pedro are so close to touching it, which would have completely transformed what you had to do. And Joe Hart was talking about Raya's back leg, and he was saying, look at Raya's back leg, like he's on it, because he knows he might have to dive in either direction. But it also meant that when no one does touch it, he kind of slowed it down and pointed to the power to kick off that back leg and make that save, which he said is a much better save than it looks. But I mean, I think it's fair to say, after perhaps a slightly wobbly game against Wolves, David Raya's really, he's back, shall we say.
Yeah, this was a big game for David Raya in the critical moment, and that was a critical moment. He needed to be able to cover either way it went, and it was inch perfect, like perfectly shaped, and inch perfect, and just the slightest touch, and it can go anywhere. And yet he's got the ball, the straight through ball covered, and he still, despite the fact nobody touches, he still has to give it everything to get to it. El Gato, as he's called in Spain, if it catches on, and I say it often enough. He's been phenomenal this season, and I hope we get good things from this season, and he'll be a huge, huge part of it. He's the best keeper in the league. His distribution was frequently interrupted in this game by the referee, giving cards but not letting him play. And the red card when Martinelli's through, you don't actually have to stop the play to give Neto a red card. Like some quite annoying stuff, but distribution-wise, he was actually really on it in this game. And it was the kind of game, because we weren't playing through midfield, we weren't building up, that lightning quick distribution. He fully got what moment we were in each part of this game, and was doing all the right things. He had a really good game. Number of the scoop save he makes, like, it's just all over the place. The one thing I'll say on the Garnacho thing is it's fascinating to look at these moments. You see Gabriel, I think it is, who's attacking? Is it Pedro who's going through there, or Joao Pedro who's going through on
the
goal?
Offside one, you mean?
No, the Garnacho cross that they almost get to.
Joao
Pedro. Yeah.
And like Gabriel's all over him, and without that he gets to it, and like you lose it in the moment, but like the defending there is clutch also from Gabriel. He does so much to occupy the striker in that situation, to unbalance him without doing so much. It's actually it's right borderline how physical he is with the guy. And it's another, I think Gabriel had a huge game, apart from like scoring or setting up the goal off the corner, all over defensively and in terms of distribution. And in that clutch moment when Garnacho does the thing that we were a little bit scarred from the previous encounter with Chelsea, he's alive to it, and he's wrapped up the attacker, and he makes enough of a difference that we see that out and make it a non-incident. And like, despite all our concerns and anxiety, they didn't actually lay that many gloves on us at the end. They had a lot of possession. We felt uncomfortable. They came at us. Most of it we kept at arm's length, apart from an offside moment, which was clearly offside, and we should throw that away and not be scarred by that.
In that, by the way, when you look back at it, look at Gabriel's step up.
Yes.
Because I noticed that on the replay. He's level with him and he sees what's happening and he's up. It's really good defending.
And I think, again, if good things happen, this will be a season in which Gabriel was the huge leader in that back line. And mentally, he always seems to be in the right place for these games. So it wasn't just, it was brilliant from Raya. It wasn't just Raya on that moment and in a number of other moments.
Clive, I'll let you close on this, because Rosenior said afterwards, he felt, I think Rosenior's assessment was very fair. He was saying tactically, this was a very even game. Yeah. But he said they managed the moments better than us, was what he said. And David Raya, I think, was a big part of that. And I think you called it as well with the Spurs game, that you felt like, I think you described it as a bit of a comeback performance after what happened at Wolves, because he's up there with the 2 goal scorers in terms of getting us these points.
Yeah, Wolves and Brentford, Tim, to be honest. I thought it was a little bit shaky at Brentford, and he fixed it. The Wolves game, okay, I'm not over that one yet, mate, but the Wolves game has hopefully led on. And let's talk about the recovery since the Wolves game. We talk about Spurs and Chelsea. They're not easy games for an Arsenal team, no matter where they are in their lives and their quality. We still got to go and deliver. And so Raya stepped up, and we had it after the game yesterday. We're doing our sort of talk about the game. I just looked at that back 5 and thought, you were all excellent. You were all excellent, every one of you. So now we're having a little bit of a chat about Zubimendi and where he is in his spring and health. We were having the very same chat about Jurriën Timber maybe 2 weeks ago, that looked a bit fatigued. And he's had a week off. He had some reduced minutes. And he's had a week off, and he came back yesterday and tore that game to shreds. And this is why I'm not jumping to conclusions on certain people. Just we have the squad to keep them healthy and alive. But we are not getting the time, and there's going to become a moment, people, I'm afraid, we may have to choose. We may have to choose something here, because this will get a lot. This will get a lot. There's a lot of games. It will get a lot. And we'll start to see people flatten. So this is where we have to change our perspective, how we look at the game, and say, actually, we can't expect this to go well. We're going to have to maybe do this at 6 out of 10. And who's going to step up while we're doing it 6 out of 10? Well, Raya stepped up when we did it at 6 out of 10 for a period. Gabriel stepped up. And they delivered beyond their normal levels and just said, no, it's not happening today. We are not letting them win. Other people were exhausted, stretching their legs. He said, don't worry, lads, we've got you. So when they have a bad day, our forwards going to step up and deliver? When they maybe let a couple in. I think we're going to have to rely on that going forward, that certain areas, due to the volume of games, just may not look as we expect. But then what happens then? What do we do? Who goes above and beyond? And I thought Raya and Gabriel, particularly in this game, and Saliba, actually, all of their back 5 were above and beyond.
Yeah, definitely. I've enjoyed talking this through, actually, because I've been kind of somewhere between, were we just a bit lucky and things went for us, or was this like 2 pretty good teams, but the more streetwise one kind of came out with it on the small details? And I think I've probably gone more towards the latter of those 2 kind of scenarios. I know Leon Osman, again, he said that on Match of the Day. He was like, these games are tight, and if you're good at set pieces, then, no problem there. I've said before, to me, that's no different than having a really good striker. Like, does Erling Haaland scoring winning goals for Man City, does that mean they're over-reliant on him, or blah, blah, blah? Like, I don't think so. And I find some of the discussion around corners and set pieces quite weird, almost like people think that there was like a heyday where corners looked aesthetically beautiful and there was none of this pulling and pushing going on. It's like, no, corners are the same. It's just teams score from them more now. But anyway, I think that'll do on this game. And we'll kind of go a bit more back to normal service once Elliot returns to the US. He's obviously on a flight today, I believe. And we'll get more back towards our scheduled programming. Obviously, we'll have an instant reaction after the game against Brighton on Wednesday night. I'll be there, so you'll probably get one of my moody, stressed voice notes. So if you want to sign up for our Patreon and hear some of that, as well as all of the other absolute millia of content that we do pretty much 6 days a week. If not, no worries, we'll be back with another pod on Thursday, looking back at the Brighton game. Haven't really previewed that one in this episode because I felt there was a lot to talk about in this game, even if it wasn't one for the purists. So big thanks to you, Paul.
Woohoo!
And a big thanks, as ever, to you, Clive.
Thank you very much.
And Elliot will be back in the hosting chair on Thursday, and we will speak to you after Arsenal 10, Brighton 0.